Welcome back to the third episode of The Golden Bachelor. Cannot wait to jump in. Now, the good news is that over 11 million people are watching this season. Wow, these are great statistics. But this episode hit me personally. Let me tell you why, and let's talk about all of that drama. Welcome to Reality TV Therapy with me, Dr. Diane. Welcome back to another episode of Golden Bachelor. I am so happy that you're here. I've hit the 1,000 subscriber mark. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and comment because I want to have a conversation with you. But let's talk schedules. Can you believe it? Tomorrow, the 19th, not tomorrow, this Thursday, is the fourth episode. We're halfway to the finale. Hard to believe. There are only 8 episodes this year. And we're not looking like we're doing any travel either. It looks like primarily they're being filmed in LA. Then we go to hometowns the beginning of November. And then we go to Costa Rica for fantasy suites. And then the final rose. So I cannot wrap my head around it. Only 8 episodes, an hour long each. It's so hard to get to know these women, but I'm loving everything that I'm seeing so far. Let's start out the night and talk a little bit about the talent show because I actually thought it was really cute. And what I love, I actually really like this tighter kind of editing because in the past we've had talent shows where you get the assignment and then they show the person like with their little pad of paper trying to write down what their talent is and figure it out. And it's so dry and boring. So I actually love that these are like tighter. You don't get all of that. Obviously the women prepared. Someone helped them because they come on a live audience and they knock it out of the park. And you're guessing, of course, that there are people behind the scenes helping them either write their script, but I just thought it was great. And so much variety. So I really appreciate the women. Susan, who looks like Kris Jenner, right? She's Karate Kid chopping up the wood. We have Sandra with the muscles telling a funny joke about boobs. We've got Ellen talking about being a sex ed teacher. Kathy doing push-ups, and who could forget Leslie and her dirty dancing dance. I actually really liked Leslie. She went all out and the girl thought she was going to win and I was like, oh gosh, I really wish that she would have. It definitely looked like Gary was enjoying himself. But even after the fact, we heard from Theresa that she did a little like song and a dance for Gary and that the whole crowd was singing along. So they obviously, with the shorter editing, had to cut out something. But then there was Joan. Now, Joan is all of us because I would be thinking the same thing. Oh my God, I don't have any talent. What am I going to do? So I really think so many people could relate to her. And what I loved, of course, is that Joan wins. So I feel like Gary is an equal opportunist. And I like that because we don't have as many kind of clear front runners, but he was reinforcing the effort that Joan put in, that she said, I'm not in my comfort zone. This is really uncomfortable. And the poem about not vomiting on the shoes, I just thought was classic. Have we ever heard anything like that before? But she definitely deserved some one-on-one time with Gary. And I thought their date was really sweet. Now, here's something I'm going to get to because we know how the story with Joan ends and that she has to leave. She does, at the dinner, tell us about her grown daughter who's had a C-section and who's had a complicated pregnancy and birth, not the typical one. So I don't know if I'm totally off on a tangent here, and I'd love to talk to Joan personally. And we are in the DMs together on Instagram. But do you think that maybe Joan wanted to go home? I don't know. I don't know if she was totally feeling it with Gary. She's one of the younger women. She's in her early 60s. Gary's 72. what if maybe Joan thought, I'm not 100% feeling it with Gary, and then she gets to leave on a very positive note. We'll never know. I may never find out. But it has happened before, and sometimes we need convenient excuses. Now, what I loved is how they handled it. So Gary comes back to the mansion. He's there to pick up Ellen for the one-on-one. And of course, we have this conversation, which all of them just feel so lovely. Like, you are so amazing. I woke up dancing. And you're like, oh, God. So excited for Gary. And he has to say, and Joan has to say that she's leaving and that she has to be a mom first. And he says, that's your moral compass. And I appreciate that about you. And they part ways. I thought it was, again, very sweet, very endearing. But I would love to see Joan and a number of the women as the Golden Bachelorette, because her skincare routine, I'm sorry, but she looks amazing. And what I really loved the most, and why I wanted to talk about this personally, was her limo exit. So Joan is in the limo, and she says that, as women, that you become invisible. And not a lot of people are talking about this, but I am a woman over 50, and I could totally relate to this. In fact, it was Paulina Poroskova who actually wrote about this. And she said that you should fade. People would tell Paulina, who is a beautiful model, that she should fade away after 50. What? I mean, again, beautiful woman, one could say she was in her prime, only 50. But a lot of women over 50 get lost. And it's not just the mothers too. I'll tell you what happens is that actually older women get silenced. I'm going to speak from my own personal experience because I've been on Instagram, I don't even know, 5 years, 7 years, I'm not even sure how long. And I will comment oftentimes on The Bachelor, somebody else's page. I'll make a comment about something that I see. And you know what people will write back? They'll say, hey, old lady, or hey, yeah, you're too old to be commenting. What? I would never say someone's too young, not smart enough, doesn't have their facts. It's like I'm simply commenting on a situation that I'm observing. So I really felt this, and why? So I like to dig a little bit deeper. Why are women being silenced? Well, there are a number of reasons that happens. But in this society, in the American society in particular, we are obsessed with youth. Look everywhere. You don't have to go too far on YouTube to see that we're all about looking younger. Botox, plastic surgery, filters, you name it. Everyone wants to be younger. The problem is we don't revere older women, or men for that matter, right? We're looking for like the newer thing, the younger thing. But people do also, and I've seen young women do this. This is why I'm calling it out. They actually kind of try to give a woman a compliment, but it's kind of a dig. I follow a lot of women in their 60s and 70s on their page, whether it's fashion or fitness. And the dig will be something like, oh, were you out in the sun a lot? The message is, I hope I don't look like you because you have some sun damage. And it really is so hard because I think we just have to normalize aging. And you could try all the gua sha stones and serums and everything you want, but age is going to catch up with all of us. And I feel like we need to, this show is making a comeback because we're revering women who are later in life. They're not done yet. They have a lot of life to live. So that's number one, that I get it. I can totally relate to Joan feeling invisible at this age, and no one wants to be silenced. Okay, number two, and we're going to get to this because I want to get to the drama between Theresa and Kathy. It's that the reality is that there is more competition. Okay? Edith said it herself. She said, we're all competing for the same guy, but let's put a bigger societal lens on this and look at what's really going on here. So in this age group, not only are women feeling sandwiched, silenced, they're really feeling unseen by men. Why is that? Well, because if we look at the remarriage rates, so the remarriage rates, meaning the pool of men who are widowed, widowers, or divorced men. Do you know that men are much more likely to remarry than women? And most typically, men, after a divorce or a death, they get remarried in 2 or 3 years. But the remarriage rate for men in 2019 was 31.5 per 1,000 men. Okay. What do you think the remarriage rate for women was? It was only 19.4 per 1,000 women of all the people eligible to remarry. That's a significant gap there, 11%. So men are more likely to remarry. What does that mean then? It just means that there are fewer men in the pool for the women to date. So I want to talk about not just the competition on the show, because that's The Bachelor, but in this pool of women, and many of my clients are also dating in their 60s and 70s, and they experience the same thing, is they just feel like there's a dearth of really good men. That's why Gary is so popular, because the men have more options. And why do the men remarry more than the women do? Well, we saw in the Golden Girls, right? The women were single, having a nice life, chit-chatting, but men oftentimes go back to what they know. And if they enjoyed being married, they're going to want to be married again. But they also deferred to someone who took care of the household, right? So there was a study done in 2019 from Harvard that married men experienced a reduced mortality rate. You've probably also heard the statistics that women who are single are the healthiest, and it's the married women who have negative health impact. But married men have better health. They have improved healing from cancer, other chronic diseases. So that's what the research shows, that married men live longer and suffer fewer health issues. Okay. I'm going to leave it there. Do with it what you will. But I don't think it's just the competition for the show. As I said, there's just a bigger societal landscape that we have to take into consideration. I want to talk about the next one-on-one with Ellen. I think Ellen is just a ray of sunshine and like an adorable woman. She's the one who goes on the 101, but before she does, there's a fashion, she gets a mini version of the Pretty Woman date, right? I'm forgetting the name of the designer, but he comes in with multiple dresses. They all look great on her. My God, with like the plunging necklines. She chooses the pink dress. I think she just looks amazing. And she goes on that hot air date with Gary. And he is just a love. Gary says the best part about, you came out is with that smile. And that's what chivalry is, right? It's just that little compliment to make her feel good about herself, like she's the only one. Now, Gary himself says he feels the most connection with Ellen, but he wasn't sure about the romance. And I kind of feel the same way. I'm not really feeling it with Ellen and Gary, and only because I also know that Gary's first wife was a brunette. Do I see him with a brunette? I don't know. But I just don't feel like, I feel like there's a goofiness, but not necessarily like a attraction. So let's put a pin in that. But I thought the date was well done. I thought it was very picturesque, beautiful, hot air balloon. Who could ask for more? And I don't think Ellen's going to be bragging too much about her date, which we're got to get to. Okay, let's get to that. All right, so Theresa and Kathy, we have to talk about this, but I'm not surprised. One, I'm not surprised because, as I mentioned, there is just more competition in this age. And two, this is still the Bachelor franchise. If you haven't watched before, this is mild compared to what we usually see. And in fact, the women, especially in the fashion show, are so lovely. Like, sweetie, you're doing great. They're all so supportive of one another that this just felt like we were going off track a little bit. But here's what I actually like about this too. You know, people are coming at Kathy, calling her a mean girl. I don't think that's really the case. I don't think that Theresa was a braggart or a boastful person either. This is how I see it. I see that Kathy, because we knew from the beginning the edits that she's getting was going to be kind of the rebel rouser, right? The first episode, she's like, I should get a rose because my dress is blue. Then the next time, I should get a rose because my dress is red. Like, we already got the sense that Kathy's insecure, right? She is in her 70s, but they're all close in age kind of at this point. And I just got the feeling that something was rubbing her the wrong way. And I will say, you know, Theresa was, in my mind, just eager, a little bit anxious. But here's the thing, she hasn't dated for a long time. So it's not like a malicious kind of, oh, I'm doing great with Gary and you're not. And I think that Kathy just blew that up in her mind. So that's what was surprising. And of course, the editing is still going to be the editing and the production of the show. So let's call it what it is. Kathy is insecure. And she also now has formed this group, the Askin group. April, Susan, Kathy, and Nancy, which was honestly a little bit surprising to me. And then they're at the pool and they talk about the Three Faces of Eve. I don't know if you've ever seen this movie, but it was a movie about this woman who has like 3 distinct personalities. But I personally thought this was like the 3 faces of Kathy, because we see different faces of her. Like in front of Gary, we see the face that looks a little bit like Caitlyn Jenner. That's one face. Then we see the face when she gets the rose from Gary, the excited face. And then there are no tears. And then we see a different face with Kathy in front of Theresa. So, okay, Theresa, yes, has a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of excitement. She shares a lot. But in all fairness, true, the clip that I saw, and of course there could be other stuff that we didn't see, was Theresa was saying, oh my gosh, you know, I've got a connection, but so do you, Leslie, and so do you, and so do you. And so she wasn't, in my mind, kind of hogging it. Now, here's what I did like. So now we've got April, and they're all at the cocktail party, and April says, you know, we should just zip it. Okay. They're not used to the show, my guess. And again, what we've seen in the past is like evil kind of, but nobody's talking about it. And so that's what I like, that let's just air this out. Let's just talk about it. Let's just get it out in the open. Let's be real women. So April then says to Theresa to kind of zip it. And I like that actually Theresa, I thought she had, you know, a lot of courage to get up and say, hey, April, what's going on here? And April says, well, it really wasn't me, it was Kathy. And then Theresa confronts Kathy. This is what grown-ass women should do. Like, let's deal with it, let's talk it out. So now this is where this gets tension-filled. Now Kathy says,
you've made me feel, oh my God, like a foregone conclusion. Oh my God.
And this is Kathy's mistake. You made me feel this way. You made me feel, Theresa, that I didn't stand a chance. You made me feel that this was a done deal with you and Gary and that I don't matter. Kathy is responsible for how she feels. Theresa is just in her lane telling her story, but did she really make Kathy feel that way? Kathy, it would have been better if she just owned it. And this is what bothers me most, because I don't feel like it was that big a deal between these two women, but I do feel like it's a big deal for Gary. and this is the part that really bothers me the most, is when Kathy now goes to Gary, and yeah, she pulls out the picture of her and her father and says he's a hardworking man. That felt out of left field, but she's trying to connect with him on some level and let him know more about her. And she's spinning it how positive she is and upbeat. And I'm not buying that really, because that's not really what we're seeing. And this is where she muddies the waters. And she says, what you see is not what's really happening. And the minute that you tell the lead something like that, they start to question everything. We've seen this happen before. And so even though she didn't name names, come on, she really threw Theresa under the bus. And I kind of feel like this might affect Gary's relationship with Theresa. And that's what I took issue with. It's okay to talk amongst yourselves. Gary will see that much later. But to go to Gary and to say that there's like someone who might be here essentially not for the right reasons, or someone who's kind of two-faced, it's just not, that's tough. That's tough to digest. So then they're talking on the stairs, and Theresa immediately, so sweet.
I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry. I never meant to do that. Oh my gosh, she's so sincere. Oh my gosh, I never meant to do that. And Kathy's like, no, stop crying. And that also felt harsh. Okay. So what are we left with? Then Theresa goes in the bedroom. She's upset. Faith comes to her, and then Gary comes to her. Of course, the producer said, she's in there crying. And he said, if you haven't been like boastful, then let it go. What wonderful advice on Gary's behalf. So we get to see him in a lovely way. And I'm hoping that Theresa felt that. But then now during the rose ceremony, okay, so that ends. Now we're in the rose ceremony. And of course, in Bachelor typical fashion, they put the two of them next to each other. Kathy and Theresa have to stand next to each other. So awkward. You could just see the shame on Theresa's face. She doesn't even want to look up at the camera. And now it's the final rose. And usually that's what's called the producer rose, meaning like we think you should give this person the rose. But that's what worried me for Theresa's long game, because she's getting the final rose, which is not a good sign. And again, Gary probably didn't know. He's like as young, naive, maybe because he doesn't know the show as Theresa is. But I felt like what's happening here is a little bit of somebody who's a little bit more strategic is winning. And that's what I didn't like. Okay. So now at the end of this, we see Edith go home and Christina, I believe. And that's where we are. So what did you think about that whole thing? I just felt like Kathy could have handled it better. She could have just, again, told Gary, I'm feeling really insecure because some of the other women's connections are stronger than mine and yours, and I just haven't had a chance with you. He still could have chosen to get up and give her a rose, but throwing Theresa under the bus is just really what I take issue with, because I get the feeling, again, this is what's going to upset Theresa's long game. I don't know, but I really did feel like she had a great connection with Gary, and I could see them together. Given that they both have lost their spouses, I thought that was a really sweet one. Okay, so we have to say goodbye to our goddess Edith with the beautiful hair and the gold dress, and so sad because I thought she was going to go much further. And that's what we have. Okay. Finally then, after the final rose, here we go again. We see Kathy and Theresa, and in the ITM, which is in the moment interview, Kathy says that, oh my gosh, Theresa is, what did she say, as dumb as rocks? Oh my gosh. Okay, that was bad. So I'm hoping there is an apology that is made there, because that was just tough. And Theresa was again just sharing her excitement. I don't believe there was anything malicious. But in the end, probably Theresa will not be asking or telling anyone in this group anything more. I get the feeling that this is hopefully kind of one and done. Alrighty, let me know what you think. And then the outtakes, so funny. I did like this part though, when Kathy says, you know, hey, if it doesn't work out with Gary, Susan, you and I, except for the gas and the guac and the meatballs, and what a funny, like, comedic timing, and that Nancy walks in and says, yeah, it was the meatballs. So that to me was the pinnacle. Okay, so I want to give out my golden crown for the Golden Bachelorette. I really think this goes to Joan. I think she handled herself beautifully. So she was my favorite of the night. I was sad to see her go, as well as Edith, but I think the women, for the most part, are just doing a beautiful job, and we again are halfway. I can't believe it. Stay tuned, more next week, and let me know in the comments what you thought.
I love this, Leslie. I just turned down my hearing aids if I don't want to hear it. Perfect.